students, faculty, staff, Professor Emeritus, alumni, thank you for coming in person and online over the Ethernet. This academic year's lecture series is called Open, in the spirit of moving past our pandemic times. Open practice, we could also call it. Over the last few years, we brought back recent College of Architecture alumni graduates such as Kevin Witt, Taylor Calloway of First Lamp, Kate Hayes and Jesus Robles from Dust. And today we will hear from Lian and Pavlina Ilieva from PI.KL Studio. All these young promising firms are located in the continental US. First Lamp in Seattle, somewhat in the middle, we can say Dust in Tucson, Arizona, and now PI.KL Studio in Baltimore to the east. You can see that geographically, our alumni started firms spanning across the continental United States. A guest lecture presentation is always inspiring and bringing us works of recognized firms a little bit closer, especially here in Lubbock. I remember as a student, it was difficult at the time to project where I would go someday. For you, our students now, it is especially inspiring to see graduates from the College of Architecture at Texas Tech are equipped with the tools to make it out in the world. As the saying goes in New York City, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. I like that to modify a bit for today and let our current students know that if you graduate from here, you can found firms anywhere. I'm thanking the College of Architecture Lecture Committee, Dr. Henrika Bühlings, Dr. Jeffrey Nesbitt, Professor Zara Zafraverdi and Professor Noemi Deplan-Lichtert, and Rachel Rowe for their services to the College of Architecture. And to College Architecture staff members, Lindsay Mims, our Director of Communication and Media, and Oscar Navidad, Media and Relations Coordinator, for their publication, and finally that we found the place into this gallery. College of Architecture staff member also Danny Mingus for IT, and Tim Bender, who making sure that you can hear us in the gallery and elsewhere. Last but not least, Sarah Hilger, the business manager, and Leslie Washington, our executive director. Without neither of them, none of us would get paid. With that, I'm giving it over to Dr. Henrika Bühlings to introduce today's lecturers. Thank you all.
I'm going to put on my other glasses. Can you hear me? Probably not. Thank you, Interim Dean Uwe Flugeur. Thank you also for introducing Pavlina and Kupao. Not much, I'm not going to say much, but it has been 21 years since we saw each other. Is that correct? Kupao is I just know, he's born in Lubbock, only moved to Amarillo before he came back here and graduated and did his thesis. I think you were in my first year, Design Fundamentals, you were my TAs, and you were also in my thesis studio in the 5th year. And then there is Pavlina, who is a very special student, who was the first student that was recruited in Bulgaria by the then Dean of the Honors College of Texas Tech University. And she came to Lubbock, Texas, all the way from Bulgaria, all by herself. And she found me and wanted to do research with me as an undergraduate in her first year for the Honors College. And I found something, Pavlina, I couldn't find the original, even though I was here till past 12 midnight, but I did find she won the congratulations of the University Honors College. Can you see that? And it says Honors College Undergrad Research Fellows reception, because she won the first prize. So she was the first undergraduate research fellow in this university, and then she won first prize. So congratulations again. That was the year 2000. Apparently, because I have some secrets, I was sitting outside and I introduced them to each other, so they became partners, not only in my TA-ship, but also as personal partners. And they have been happily married and have a daughter that I have not seen yet. I also know both of them. Pavlina also did her thesis with me and as a chair of the design studio teaching. And the two of them graduated approximately at the same time with a cohort of Dominique Courrier, Kate Hayes, and many, many others. And we, at the time, so that's when we met. I have another surprise for Pao. Can somebody comment? Film, I found in my office the model that you were working on, and that's your model of your thesis project. So can we have that? Can somebody look at that? So that is this model that you made in my office. Now you understand why it looks like a candy cane store, right? So I hope this, I was hoping to give that to you personally, because you were planning to be here in person, but unfortunately that is impossible. And then we have another surprise for you. And so I will see you and ask your questions. I can't talk about what you did after you left here. So I'm really eager to see how far you made it. I heard a lot of good things, but I really don't know. And I don't like to talk about something I really don't know myself or have experienced. But we have another surprise for you. And I would like to invite, I'm the faculty advisor of the College of Architecture, Honor Society Tau Sigma Delta. And I'm going to ask the president of that organization to come and address you very briefly. Thank you.
My name is Landon Wade. I am the president of Tau Sigma Delta, the Upsilon chapter, which is our local chapter here at Texas Tech University. Tau Sigma Delta started in 1913 in Michigan as an honor society for colleges of architecture across the US. And the Upsilon chapter here at Texas Tech started in 1962. We are the second longest chapter that has been practicing in an unbroken manner. A lot of other chapters have had some off years, but we have been going strong since 1962. A lot of that is thanks to Professor John White, who is here today, who's been a faculty advisor since 1984. We're really thankful for his service. Tau Sigma Delta is an honor society that operates by invitation according to grade point average. Inductees are invited usually at the end of their third year or the end of their second year in graduate school. The Upsilon chapter has the privilege of awarding 2 different medals every year. One goes to a student, which is called the Bronze Medal, which is awarded for architectural achievement in an academic career. And the other is the Silver Medal, which is awarded to a professional with a record of distinction in design. As president of Tau Sigma Delta and on behalf of us and our organization, at this time, I'd like to award the Silver Medal to Pavlina and Pao for their distinction in architecture. Let's see if that's showing all right. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I think it's important to mention the long line of great designers and great architects that you will be joining as recipients of this award. And due to our modality, we can't officially bestow these awards on you today physically, but you will be receiving them shortly in the mail. So nothing to worry about there. Thank you.
Hello? Can everybody hear us over there? I don't know if anybody can answer us, but okay,
Yes.
that's all we saw. Yes.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Texas Tech. We're so delighted to be here with you today on a beautiful fall afternoon in Baltimore, Maryland, but looking westward towards Lubbock, Texas. We haven't been back in a very long time, and we were really hoping to be there with you in person, but we're going to reserve this to a few months from now when we hope to be able to visit at the end. Thank you for inviting us, Professor Flukiger. Thank you for the amazing introduction, Dr. Viewlings. We've been down memory lane for weeks now, preparing for this lecture and just remembering everybody and all of the exciting things that we got to do while we were there. Thank you so much, Tau Sigma Delta. What an incredible surprise. We're very honored by this distinction, and thank you for the recognition. We're beyond everything excited to connect today with the current students. It was certainly warm and fuzzy remembering when we were one of you a few years ago. And we hope that today's presentation and showing you our path and our work in the last 20 years would give you a bit of energy coming into this new semester with everything open and with our hearts and minds open as well.
I'm going to share screen real quick. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that a yes? Okay. And did you see the previous? Did you see these?
No, sorry, we didn't.
I can't understand that. I'm sorry. Say again.
No, we weren't able to see it.
Okay. Hold on. Let's just get out of this. I don't know. I'm not sure. Hold on. We're going to try again real quick. How's that? I'm hoping that it works. Good. Okay. Let's leave this here. Just to make sure. Okay, we're gonna assume that's good, and you guys can see that. Okay. Fast forward a little bit as we're moving forward here. This is a quick view of my thesis, I guess. Same thing, kind of in sort of the realm of where I came from. I was coming from a place that wasn't a dense and urban condition, and so I wanted to examine that a little bit more. And so I did my thesis in Houston, Texas, and particularly in the outskirts of downtown, and kind of wanted to really understand sort of those, obscure conditions between cities and between spaces. And so that's kind of what I was looking at, and looking at kind of thinking about what, urban conditions could look like in these sort of ex-urban kind of places. And a lot of times that we're doing that through, was actually through, looking at through film. And that's kind of one of the things that we were looking at. I was looking at through this process of through the thesis. Another project that we actually were working on back then in school was looking at urban conditions here in the East Coast. And this is a project that I did with actually the alumnus at Texas Tech as well, Shelby Morris. This is actually post 9/11, just right after that time, and the city, New York, was looking at ways in which to think about how to, create a sustainable or a green, in their sort of minds, a green ground zero in that area. And so we were looking at sort of ideations about how to kind of like think about exposing sort of the ecological sort of notions there in that city and so forth. So that was just a competition we did. And that was kind of like the idea that when we were in school, we didn't just sort of, do studio work and some of our schoolwork. We actually wanted to kind of explore and look at competitions and sort of extracurricular ideas there. Another one that we kind of looked at the time, it was actually that sort of the digital and the virtual sort of notion of leisure and work and play was not quite, as tactile as sort of explored as it is today. And so back then we wanted to kind of explore that a little bit more. And so we developed another project during our schooling there too, as well. We worked with, it was just a collaboration between Pavlina and myself and Shelby. And just again, looking at sort of what does it mean to work and to play and to really kind of think about, sort of reality versus, the conditions of reality versus and so forth. So, and these are just kind of images from that project.
Those are just a few select projects that we wanted to show from school, kind of pick up the story from where we left off. Pao and I graduated around the same time with our master's degrees, and we were ready to explore the world. He graduated a little bit ahead of time, started looking for jobs anywhere nationally. And one of the first great opportunities that landed was in Baltimore, Maryland. And the idea was, let's try it out, see how it is. And, we can move on to the next place after that. And these are famous last words. Here we are 20 years later with a little bit of travel. We headed out east back in 2003 to search for the urban, to search for a path and for possibilities for design. And sort of never looked back in the sense that we continued to develop, to grow, and to open up our horizons. And we hope that these next few chapters that we're going to show you are going to paint the picture of what that specific path ended up looking like. This is Baltimore, Maryland. This immediate area outside of our window here is the historic part of House Point, that pink square over there on the map. But as you can tell, this is a real old city. It's dense. It has the downtown, the waterfront, the marinas, the big stadiums. It's really an exciting place to be. It also is a city of many contrasts and many challenges and difficulties. So needless to say, even back in 2003, it really grabbed our imagination. It really touched our hearts because of all of the good and obviously all of the bad, and being able to experience life at such a degree, but also be able to contribute to it through design. Our very first years of experience were in larger firms. I was at the big local HCM, Pao was at the big international PI.KL, and we got to touch a lot of really important work. We played really significant roles in both the brand new hospital that we got to work on, and for Pao, who traveled to Korea and took part of an international competition of several weeks, designing very intensively for the Korean Science Museum. And just an extraordinary 2-3 years of really getting our feet deep into architecture and learning very rapidly at these very large firms where they're very well-oiled machines. So you get to see that whole process and how a large project comes together. But we were also very interested again in all of these other things that are happening beyond. And so with a couple of our colleagues, Jesus Robles and David Lopez, also at the same firm at the time, we actually responded to the competition soon after Katrina hit New Orleans, and they tried to re-envision new forms of housing and urbanization along the waterfront, and really trying to recover from all of those experiences. We never stopped imagining and really finding these competitions and being able to share ideas, and with that learn, research, and produce new work, and really stretch ourselves in a way that on projects that we otherwise weren't doing. These are a couple of more competitions. The first one that I showed placed in the finalists. The second ones were also ranked in some sort of way, but we were really proud of them because they're a piece of personal research that I think influenced a lot of our work many years later. Also in Baltimore, we were able to engage with some really exciting collaborations. This is Hidden Walls for Urbanite magazine. We're paired up with the producer and writer of The Wire. Many of you may be familiar with that HBO show, but also with the dean of the public health school and Johns Hopkins, kind of as a extraordinary combination of minds to come together and start to think of some visionary ideas for how to address some of the disparities in Baltimore. We met at a coffee shop in a matter of months, for weeks on end, and where we had a lot of really great discussions and started to develop these ideas of these safe havens and environments amidst some of the more devastated neighborhoods in Baltimore. It was at the time a very controversial idea of welding off people from what's hard outside, but we paired that with some research on the ground. This is a film that Pavlina and I created, interviewing various residents of the area, city officials, and cultural and social leaders to really start to reinforce some of these ideas. It was another way of really communicating. You'll see a theme where film and video have been part of our learning and of our work for a very long time.
So after that sort of migration from Texas to here to Baltimore to the east, in 2007 we decided, hey, maybe we can go check out what the West has to offer it, and kind of, you know, think about architecture and design and building in a different way. And that's when actually one of our colleagues from Texas Tech, one of our part of our cohort, Dominic Goudier, was working at Sebastian Mariscal's studio at the time in San Diego, and said, hey, we need some fresh blood, and they pulled us over, and we joined Dominique and as well as Jesus over at Sebastian Mariscal's studio. And so when we were there, we were only there for about 2 years, but it felt like 5. I don't know. It was a very intense time to work with Sebastian and everybody there, but it had so much energy and so much, sort of life to it. And we developed and designed a few projects with Sebastian. Above, you see there's the Phoenix House in San Diego. Pavlina worked on that project with Jeff Svitak and with Sebastian. Below was a project that I worked on with Sebastian in Monterrey, Mexico. It was actually a house for his brother, and that was built then as well. And so it was really an interesting time to kind of really understand architecture and sort of the idea of resolve and sort of the moments of space and sort of all those kind of feelings you have when you're thinking about those intimate settings, So that was really a very a great learning experience for us, and understanding predominantly the sort of the design and development and design build sort of aspect of the profession. We went from companies that are 100 people, companies, all the way to a shop that was only 8 people. So that really kind of gave us a great sort of spectrum of like what it's like to work in a studio where you have to basically do, sort of everything from start to finish. One of the other projects that we did with the group there, with Dominique and with Jesus and everybody over there, was for Sebastian, was an exhibition that we did at the MSC SD there in San Diego. And it was kind of like this kind of a looking back on all the projects that we did with the studio. There was a great legacy that he had begun there, and we really wanted to sort of show like what it's like to have the process of development and the process of design build, and really kind of show kind of a room of vestiges. And that was kind of a really great way for us to end our time there. We were there for a few years, and we kind of wrapped up our time there with this exhibition, and then we sort of said, hey, maybe that's a good time for us to kind of explore other realms from there. One of the things that we also did too was kind of like we sort of continued this idea of these little tangents. And so while kind of our last year there, we did this small project. It was another competition where we really wanted to explore, again, a different type of scale and project. And so this was actually for a competition in Dallas to look at the site just south, I believe, of City Hall. And they wanted us to look at, kind of a sustainable, what does it look like to create like a sustainable housing scenario, and with diversity and kind of a mixed use kind of site. And that was kind of our first forte into really looking at sort of housing at that scale. And so we did get awarded a project that, sort of a recognition to that project. And it was really, really for us, a great way to kind of end, our time in the West and start making our way back East. And that's when we started PI.KL Studio. PI.KL was, for us, we really wanted to, look at how, the things that we've learned from the big companies as well as the smaller companies as well. And so that really kind of gave us a great sort of, aspect of like thinking about design build and bringing that back to the East Coast. So one of the first projects that we actually did was a design build project. This was done in 2010. And the Creative Alliance what is an art sort of program here in the east side of town, and they needed sort of a place where they can actually have event and have gathering and so forth. So that was actually one of our first projects to design and build. We actually did that with another architect here. At the time, we were kind of just starting and kind of working in this town, and so we were really collaborating with other designers and architects in that region. And this is actually our first build, design build project. And of course, like any kind of startup, architecture firm, you don't have a tremendous amount of projects at the same time. So, I think Pavlina and I were kind of looking at places where we can kind of get our hands into different modes of practice and so forth. And I actually, got into film production after a while. So these are actually a couple of films or projects that I worked on here in Baltimore. Game Change was a movie here that I did here from HBO in Baltimore City. Another show, if you guys have ever seen, there's a show called Veep that we did. I did 2 seasons on that show. And then just recently we did a project for Kamasi, Washington for Apple in collaboration with a number of artists locally here. And so film production, it actually was kind of big here in Baltimore, and it's slowed down a bit, and it's kind of coming back up again. And so a lot of that sort of tie that Pavlina was talking about earlier, where we kind of use film in a way to kind of explore space and art and project. It still continued in our process, and we kept that going after a while. Another thing that most young firms do probably a lot is teaching, right? So there was a time where you don't have a lot of projects happening in the office. So we started teaching. Both of us started teaching in different places of academia. So this is when I was starting to teach at Maryland Institute College of Art. This was a pre-college course that I taught there, and this was really actually bringing, young, pre-graduate students into the design field and really kind of introduce them to architecture, introduce them to tectonics. And so that was, some of these kids that are designing these projects are, could be 15 years old and 17 years old, and they're just now starting to learn about the idea of drawing and then model making. This was an integrated 3D design studio. It's kind of like the first year studio at MICA. And, this was just some works that we had, from that studio, and really kind of allowed some of these students to really kind of explore and think about sort of tectonics and three-dimensionality. Also taught kind of their terminal thesis project. It's not a graduate thesis. It's like a sort of end of 4-year kind of terminal thesis, terminal project. And, again, just showing some of the work from that studio. This is what's great about the sort of the ideation of projects through that studio is that it was very much exploratory. It didn't have to fall and end on an architectural project per se, but it did have to deal with space and morphology and theory in some cases. So it just needed to think about the idea of creating space and in the environment. I also taught at Morgan, and this is actually a good transition to Pavlina, where she started to work at Morgan at the time, and actually took a bigger role at Morgan State School of Architecture and Planning. This is just one of my studios where I worked with a few of the seniors there and developing projects for their sort of terminal thesis as well.
Yeah, my experience with academia was also sort of started at Maryland Institute College of Art, teaching some of the fundamental urban design studios, a lot of exploratory work. And at the time, sort of this innocent idea of adjuncting or teaching one class at a time as a supplement, and because there is additional time from work, brought me to Morgan State University School of Architecture and Planning, where I taught for a semester or two, a single class, and I slowly got enticed into taking up more. So before you know it, I was a full-time instructor at Morgan, and in a few short years, I became a program director of the undergraduate program. And my experience, my 10 years experience at Morgan, are a separate lecture in and of itself. It was an incredibly rich experience. I got to do a lot of extraordinary work, but the way to really sum it up is that in many ways, the competitions and the challenges that we're looking for before, that allowed us to continue to research and look at things and ask questions and, you know, find topics that we are not experts in yet, but really try to learn as much as possible, was really channeled into our teaching experience. We were the ones now setting up kind of the questions and the explorations, and together with our students, we were able to really pursue them. It was also a very rewarding experience in the sense that, you know, in those few years, we were able to accomplish quite a bit as a program. As a program director, I had quite a bit of freedom actually to be able to influence the curriculum, and I had amazing colleagues that were all on board, and we were able to work very hard for a few years and get some recognition. In front of you is some of the work of our beginning design studio that got awarded an ACSA Diversity Achievement Award for the entire first year curriculum as a fresh way of looking at how do you introduce a very diverse body of students who are not necessarily interested in the traditional canons of architecture to the field of architecture, and be able to set up a common narrative that is both personal to them and therefore related to the interests that brought them in the field to begin with, but also offers a point of departure for growth and future exploration. A familiar picture on the left for some would be that wearable piece of architecture. It's a program that an event that I started from very first year, where at the end of your first semester, you get to construct it and wear it down the runway. And I was very much inspired by my first year at Texas Tech. It was Professor Flukiger's first semester in the program. KL was in that class as well. And he was teaching with Dr. Jones, and there was an architecture fashion show and everyone got to wear it down. I remember it being extremely nerve-wracking, but also very, very fun. So our students had no choice but to take part of that as well. A couple more images of the first year curriculum, sort of moving from main tectonic exercises into design process, while space and site, and then later a piece of furniture on the scale of the human body again, to take a course of design and really start from very simple ideas, schematic ideas, and develop through a greater degree of detail. In the case of the chairs on the right, this was the end of the first year. Everyone designs and builds a chair from a single sheet of plywood, does the shop drawings, constructs it, and then presents it in the lobby of our school. And another great act in a way to finish that first year. Also, another big accomplishment was my second ACSA education award. I recognize that as a huge achievement. There was incredible, especially that year, really strong projects in housing, and something that we developed a huge passion for. It was a curriculum we developed in the undergraduate program, and this is actually one that KL and I got to work on together. Very rare thing when it came to teaching. But it was, again, a similar idea of really tying house and home to everyone's personal experiences. So they documented through photography and poetry, and then they imagined it in collage, and then they got into sort of really realizing it into form. And being able to deal in the bottom left corner in a very typological fashion, but then on the right hand side start to arrive with some very unique ideas, all the work of one semester. And then students will also collaborate in these large assembled models of housing for an entire neighborhood, and created a really collaborative environment. It was really heartwarming to see that. It reminded me of some of our experiences in school. This giant model we built for Professor Musauter, a giant model for Professor McBurney, just wonderful stuff. And it was a great bonding experience for these students as well. Also another a studio that was very influential in the area was our urban design studio, and together with really understanding urban morphology for the students, gave us an opportunity to actually partner up with Baltimore City's planning department and housing authority and really work together on some projects that are active and real in the city. And these particular 9 blocks and that Prince imagined that year and actually got a design award for are now undergoing one of the biggest revitalization effort in the city. So for several years, our studios were part, sort of very much on the pulse of the city and being able to work on these various projects that are real, that are happening, and that have a lot of backing and support behind them. So it's another really rewarding experience to be involved into something that that's significant. This now transitions into our second part of our work. Up to this point, the studio was young for the first few years. It gave us an opportunity to do quite a lot of fun things, be it HBO set design or a lot of teaching, and then working on a lot of small fun projects. But soon we got an opportunity to grow our work and actually start to work on things not only larger in scale and size, but also in importance. This was, we think, the project that really changed kind of the size of our firm and the way we thought about it. It was a significant one in the sense that it was just the food hall, and now they're everywhere, as you can all imagine, in every city. But back in 2016 and 17, Baltimore really needed a place to gather casually. It renovated an old auto body shop, and it was just one of those big surprises that ended up being an anchor in the community. And the place, up till the pandemic, was packed with families and people of all ages all the time. It was really an exciting project to work on, and it sort of changed the expectations in Baltimore as to how we approach things of that nature. And it was a lot of our earlier studies of urbanity and how people use space that really were poured into that design. This is an example of our first residential development design build project. Perhaps something that Val did mention when we're talking about Sebastian Mariscal's studio is that one of the reasons we wanted to go there is because we wanted to learn more about design build, but also development design build. And while we weren't able to really work on a development project with him, we were close enough to that kind of work to really start to understand how one, as an architect and within their own sort of small capacity, can actually self-perform an entire project from development through design and through build. And this is a project not too far away from here in the historic part of Fells Point, where we took what was really a ruin of a 200-year-old house and turned it into a contemporary residence. And it got a design award from Baltimore. This is another project here in our neighborhood, Broadway Market. It's part of the 200-year-old, one of the oldest public market systems in the country. And it sat vacant and boarded up for 10 years. Before that, it was really used as a black box. Cars were parked right all around it, all the way up to its wall. So we envisioned a place that, again, it becomes the anchor for the community and transforms the entire area around it. These were all empty storefronts around, and a project like this really helps restart things. So the first thing we did is we built new sidewalks right on the side of the market. We opened up all the arches, and we created this lovely patio and gathering area in the front. And I'll never forget the day. It was a week after it was done, and we were wondering if they'll open and if anyone will go. And we turned the corner, and it was a scene similar to what you're seeing in these photos. It was flooded with people, and that continued for, months on end until the pandemic started. And really nothing beats that feeling of seeing a project that you've touched be so very much loved by the people that get to use it. This is an image sort of introducing our design build effort, and really just a quick snippet of our hands-on approach. It was really important for us, together with the big ideas that we're kicking around in terms of urbanity and how cities should function, sustainability and things like that. A lot of the things we picked up also at Sebastian's office is really thinking about the nitty gritty. One thing he used to say was that the more you build, the better you design. It really allows you to anticipate so many important aspects of design that you can actually build into the conceptual framework of what you're working with. And we tend to approach a lot of our design build projects that way. It's not, oh, here's a cool design and then let's figure out how to build it. We're constantly thinking about all of these different aspects at the same time. And this is one of our team members and also one of our trusted builders and collaborators. You really rely on your people in these kinds of environments in order to be able to bring continuity between development, design, and build. So definitely the level of control is the greatest in that kind of scenario. So this is our next development, design, build project. In another historic neighborhood, we wanted to stretch the idea of perhaps having a more historically kind of framed facade in the front, but really allow for contemporary language to develop in the back, like the image at the top. And then went for this really clean, airy, light-filled experience on the inside. Another scale of project. So we do some of the larger projects. We do the development, design, build ones, which are our own little small self-performed ones. And we also enjoy a ton of really fun, small commercial projects. In this particular case is Toki Taco. This isn't a rendering, it's the real space. And yes, the graphic override, the pink really transforms your perception, even when you're there in person. And it's mixed with some really creative Korean inspired taco food. And it's really this fun, dreamy, imaginary space. We love these small projects in our studio because they're very rapid and they really bring a great degree of satisfaction. While other projects may take several years to complete, these usually take a few months to a year, and you've completely transformed what's otherwise an empty shell into something that people get to enjoy. This next one we wanted to share is another type of work that we do. So many projects that we are not showing today have to do with some of our art installations for the Light City Festival that was happening in Baltimore, and a lot of really kind of hands-on things inspired perhaps from set design, this idea of the temporary object. Many of you know that set design, although it looks like the White House, it's not really the White House, it is foam and a lot of other things. And so a lot of installations, urban installations or art installations have that temporary quality as well. And we've done quite a few of them, but really the one that turned out to be the most meaningful is the one we were called to do this last summer. It was energizing an open space in the city so that people can gather safely and socialize during really the heat of the pandemic. And so this is a picture with our mayor and with a number of volunteers and collaborators that worked on this project. It was called Design for Distancing. And there were different teams that were hired to design and build a very quick urban tactical installation that will allow for a use of the space. And so we partnered up with a community, we found this empty lot, and then we got right to work. We completed design and built this project in 2 short months. It's affectionately called the Meadow, because we wanted to really take advantage of the greenfield lot, and we mowed sort of flat mowed areas for occupation, left the rest of the grass high, which really created the different spaces. And then we inserted these simple structures for shade and really shelter that humanized the whole space. Oh, and we also did a guerrilla sowing of wildflowers in the middle of the summer. So by fall, the meadow was full of wildflowers as well. So it was a really uplifting space and a really hard time. And as a matter of fact, it was well loved. So they've decided to keep it for the time being until the lot finds its permanent development. And now they've been able to host some events as well. And lastly, this is another competition. We couldn't help it. If academia took most of the kind of exploratory attention during the last few years, We really phased that out because the studio got really busy with larger work and our team grew. But that need to really explore things that you don't get to do in your regular work remained. So this last year we did this competition with our team in Korea for a new city hall. And we really wanted to check in with, okay, 10 years since we've done the previous one, how would you approach some of these ideas of sustainability, of resilience, of urbanity, and actually of civic life in this particular case with the whole city hall complex. It was another really robust learning experience for our entire team.
So some of the projects that were kind of happening, you know, once we started getting the studio really moving forward, there's a lot of other projects I'd love to share, but it would take quite a bit of time. So they were just kind of a select few that we felt that really kind of resonated with some of the things that are very impactful here in the city. And then it's kind of, I'm going to share just a few things that are coming up on the boards kind of thing. And a lot of these projects are actually in construction, and some that will be in construction later on down the road. So this is a project that we're working on right now. It's actually in construction. It's coming out of the ground. It's a 150 unit multifamily project on the east side of town. It's just coming out with foundations and footings and new columns. And there's going to be sort of a subterranean parking level, and then the rest of it is all above grade. It's all wood construction with a podium, and it's a really great project for the city, particularly in that area, because the housing sort of typologies there are not as quite diverse yet. And I think this project actually is going to bring a tremendous amount of sort of diversity in terms of new types of living and new types of typology within that district. So we're really excited about this project, and you know, we're hoping by, you know, years in next year we're going to have a new project coming out of the ground. So right now it's like I said, it's in foundations. Another project that it's in construction right now is another multifamily project that we're doing in Little Italy in Baltimore. This is a 40 unit multifamily project. It's a very actually quite a small project for, you know, for the area in terms of multifamily, but really kind of creates these moments of sort of living that is actually still providing quite a bit of diversity within the area in terms of housing typology. And also it's being very, you know, trying to be very thoughtful with sort of the context, you know, it being Little Italy and it being Baltimore. We really wanted to kind of create a sort of an architecture, and as well as sort of architectural spaces that really complement the streetscape there in Little Italy, and it sort of breaks down sort of the form and the scale of projects there within that district. So we're very excited about this project. This one actually topped out just recently, and it's going into finishes now. Another project that's going into construction, it's actually in construction right now, is in Wilmington, Delaware. This is again, this is sort of on the same kind of lines of that one of our, you know, first sort of social halls of our house. This is kind of sort of coming down that same line of like creating new types of places of leisure, places of play. And so this is actually sort of a bowling sort of / kind of restaurant bar in Wilmington, Delaware. And we're actually doing a few more projects in Wilmington right now that are all kind of this sort of social hall, social gathering type spaces within the downtown area. So this is also in construction right now. Another project that we're really excited about as well is a project that we're doing for Maryland Food Bank. This, you know, Maryland, during the pandemic, one of the organizations like Maryland Food Bank was really hit hard in terms of the capacity of what they needed to do to provide food to people that really are in need. And so one of the things that they needed to do was expand their programming and their distribution. So this was a 20,000 square foot sort of expansion of their existing facilities in Baltimore. And we're really excited about this one. This is also in construction right now. And it's really kind of like creating a new kind of sort of experience of the sort of industrial production space. It's creating a brand new kitchen for their FoodWorks program, which they really, you know, sort of train, students to really get into the sort of the culinary field. And also that it really kind of expands their production for food distribution. And so it's a really great and important project for us and for the city of Baltimore. Another project that we're kind of very excited about as well is Sandtown Furniture Company. This is actually a good friend of ours that's an amazing maker of furniture here and using reclaimed wood to their work. They just purchased this building. This is actually a very old sort of industrial building on the southwest side of town. It's a beautiful structure, just an amazing sort of space. And it's kind of something that you kind of see a lot here in Baltimore. It's like a tremendous sort of, a series of sort of buildings here in the city that are just, old but coming from industrial uses in the past. So we're very excited about taking this project into a new sort of understanding of context of production space, as well as gallery, and as well as a place for event. So this one is actually also in construction right now, and hopefully we'll see before the end of the year the sort of. So just continuing, and I promise we're almost done. Just to continue on the projects that are on the boards. This is still the continuation of that project that I was explaining, the one in Port Covington. So this is just sort of conceptual renderings that we have for the pavilion, and again, it's going through construction documents at this time. The final project we're just going to share real quick is one that we haven't shared with anybody yet. This is actually a project that we're working on for a nonprofit organization that deals with quite a bit of heavy subject matter. There's a food distribution and dealing with sex trafficking and people that are sort of from devastated from that realm of things, and also looking at job training and so forth. So there's a lot of different programs that are happening at this location, and we're looking at rethinking the industrial sort of buildings that they have purchased there, and creating new programming and new spaces for their programming, as well as instituting new housing for people from that area. So it's a really great project for us, and again, looking at how to kind of stitch the sort of architecture between the industrial landscape as well as the sort of the residential part of that district in South Baltimore. Just across the street, there's a sort of a landscape of single family homes there. So we really wanted to try to make an architecture there that fits with the industrial landscape as well as the houses around.
This is the last set of slides that we've prepared for you, and really looking into the future. This last year was very transformative for so many people. It gave us an opportunity to really reflect back on what we've done, not only because our big 10-year anniversary party for the company got canceled because of the pandemic, but it really told us, all right, well, maybe next time we celebrate it, it will be a 12th year anniversary. But it allowed us to really reflect back on where we are as a company, and we realized that we never planned for the various stages, and we never set up specific goals for where we wanted to be. We remained open-minded and continued to work and search and stretch and create, and we arrived here today, and we were really starting. This is the first time when we actually asked ourselves, okay, where do we want to go next? What are the kind of things that we want to do? Do we want to, of course, we're going to keep doing design. And I think now we have so many exciting collaborations and relationships with people. And I think we can get engaged in a lot of different things. And this extraordinary opportunity came to us last year this time. It's actually an old branch library in our neighborhood that also sat vacant for 10 years, and it's about 150 years old, and it's a gorgeous old building that has come into disrepair, and the city decided to put it up for adoption, and they put an RFP, and we applied, and we ended up winning the request for proposals, and we're in the final stages of finalizing the purchase of this beautiful building, and it actually comes with a really large open space in the back. It allowed us to really take everything we've ever dreamed of or imagined or wanted to do to this next level. And so we're hoping that in the next couple of years to come, we'll be able to transform the building into this new center that will bring a lot of the things that we've always been interested in, which is sort of the creative side of things, design, and also the entrepreneurial side of things, which is entrepreneurship and economic development, but really the communal side of things, which has to do with a lot of community building, like food and education and things like that. And turn it into this wonderful complex where a lot of these things can come together. These are some examples of places that we really admire, and we have it sort of as a vision for the space. This is a quick drawing sketch of what we're envisioning for it. The building on the right-hand side is the existing library to be renovated, and then adding a second structure in the back that will start to serve as a co-working space for our office and a lot of our collaborators, but also as an event space, with the courtyard and garden, and then with a food program in the front building as well as the community space. We're extremely excited about this project. This will be our next level of development, design, build, obviously moving away from the single family homes, and we've always wanted to do something slightly bigger, but definitely more robust as a program. And what an incredible opportunity this is, both for really take our company to the next level in the sense of the kind of things we can do, but also to start to give back to the city, to the education community that we've supported all these years, and really start to think forward and how to bring those things together, as opposed to having them ever so separate as they are today. And we hope that at another time we'll be able to show you PI.KL 2.0, which will be at its new house and its new form, and really exploring some of these ideas of open practice. In summary, some of the work that we've shown you was never meant to be grouped thematically or by scale or anything like that. We really wanted you to see it as a path, as a fluid path. And as this persistent kind of way of searching and stretching and creating and growing, and allowing for sort of your own willpower and your own set of skills to continue to really expand and take you to the places that you want to be. We're hoping that this presentation gives you a little bit of an idea that anything is possible. It really is. And there's also no limitations to what kind of activity or project or relationship you want to get yourself involved into. It all comes together as a matter of creating places for people. Every single effort that we've put forward, whether it was an art installation or a design build project or a film, or teaching the studio with a hypothetical project, have all come together and really informed each other and continue to inform the work every single day.
I just want to end on a few more images. This is actually a great place to just say, hey, thanks for everybody there for allowing us to come to speak to you guys today. This is an image from Walter de Maria's Lightning Fields. And the reason why I show this is I think once you kind of get into this place where you're in your studios, you're working on your projects, you're thinking about careers, you're thinking about work outside of school. The one thing that we don't ever forget, we don't ever take granted for is experiences. I think the pandemic was a tough thing that really kind of put, sort of a damper obviously on being able to connect physically and to be with people. And so that was something that we missed a lot during the last few years, and kind of we're still kind of seeing the efforts of that. So, but we, those are the moments that you don't want to forget. You want to be able to go out there and really kind of get inspired and to be with people. And then the last image I'll show is hopefully I'm embarrassing some of our friends that are online right now, but these are the people that we graduated at Texas Tech with. These are our some of the people from our cohort, our most dearest of kindred spirits. And then if it's not for having a circle of people that you probably are sitting next to right now, we wouldn't be where we are today. It's been over 20 years since we've been at Texas Tech, and to this day I look back and we still, admire the work of our colleagues. We get challenged, we get, we aspire. They really help us, and I hope we help them be, where we are today, where everyone is today, and we never regret that, we never lose that. So hopefully, when you're sitting in your room in your studio, you look around, you'll always remember that as well, and think about that in the future, and continue to have those relationships that, you know, we're so lucky to have. So at that, I'll leave it at that. And thank you guys again for letting us speak to you today. And we love to hear your questions and go from there.
Hello, I'm Jeffrey Nesbitt. I hope our guests can hear me. Are we good? Very good. I am the H. Dean Pierce Endowed Chair here in the College of Architecture this year, and I've been asked to be the chair of the lecture series this year amongst many of my colleagues. What I'm here to do, and you'll notice as we run our lecture series this year, we're going to have moderations in order to help engage a discussion after these fantastic lectures. I want to thank our guests. I think it was a beautiful lecture, very inspiring, certainly for me. I'm also a tech alum, so it's great to be amongst a wonderful community of folks. To kick it off, if you have questions here in the audience, please interrupt me at any time. And those that are virtually logged in, please write your questions in the chat, and I'll try to hand those out to our guests. The first thing I want to start with, if I may, is there's a few things that came to mind in the lecture. The first thing is what we may or may not call extra urban. I think that came up a few times, which I find to be fascinating in terms of architectural profession, is we tend to say, well, where is urban and where is our architecture placed in that context? And we often find in work, in beautiful work like you guys have presented, that can actually be questioned. And so I find that to be really, really helpful. The other word I wrote is empathetic. And I found the work, and I hope the students did as well, is that the work has empathy. Because from what we attract, you guys present today, is that it sort of starts with questions of sustainability maybe 20 plus years ago. But I think we're in your office is a wonderful example of how we've moved from questions of sustainable practices towards, in fact, questions of sympathy, empathy, equity. And now with the food bank projects and the later project that you showed, I think are really in the spirit of where the profession is. So I guess my first question to launch to you guys, if I may, is how do you find as a practice to engage the questions about available public land in the city, publicly owned property, and be able to creatively and actively participate in the questions of those sites, because often they're not even projects yet. And I'm curious about how you engage with the city of Baltimore and such sites in question.
Thank you for the kind words and for the really sharp analysis of what we just put in front of you. I appreciate it. I'll answer the question about the available land and how they become projects. It's a fascinating thing, isn't it? It's interesting to know how much agency one can have in really transforming the city once you understand that that's possible and there's actually processes in place that allow that to happen. Much of that we've learned actually through the work with our students. A lot of that exploratory work, and especially in areas where revitalization was happening or was possible, through a lot of those years of really studying those areas, we realized that cities like Baltimore and other places really have more land stock and more even building stock that they're able to really develop. That might very much be the condition of a Rust Belt city like Baltimore, and it's very different elsewhere, like San Diego, for example, where land is a lot more expensive and more scarce to find in the city proper anyways. But here in Baltimore, there's still a massive amount of structures and really even vacant land that have lost structures in what was before a city that was twice as dense as it is today. And regardless of the fact that there has been, pretty sharp redevelopment in the last few years, there's still a lot of projects like that. Part of it is our constant questioning and looking at things, but we like to keep our fingers on the pulse of where are those areas happening? What are these important sort of properties and things available, and then really look for these opportunities. I'll tell you how this Library 19 thing came about. We walk by that library every day, and I was wondering, when will this finally see some life? Why is it sitting here rotting? And we contacted the Housing Authority of Baltimore in community development, housing in community development. And we asked them that exact same question. And they said, well, we've been thinking about it. It's probably time to put it out and hope that somebody can do something good with it. And it was, sometimes it's a little bit of a nudge like that, a little bit of a prompt, and it happens. And of course, there were other proposals, and ours was the one that was very community focused. So the second part of your question was about how do you really go about it, how do you get it. It's hopefully, it's a bidding war at that point. You can always have a proposal that brings more money to the city, but in our particular case, we're bringing a lot more sort of communal capital, if you wish, and robust relationships like that. So luckily we have a city leadership that values one more than the other, and our proposal was the chosen one.
Yeah, and just to add, even though this is a pretty big city and it's a pretty dense city, it's actually still a small town. It still has, everybody kind of knows everyone. And, we learned very quickly that once you get here and you really kind of get involved, you have to start to build those relationships really quickly. That's whether with the community, with all of the city, planners and everyone. That's so important. Like, that part of our work probably is, first, it's for sure that we have to be designers and we have to be architects and we have to design things and build things. But a lot of times it's about the negotiation, it's about the protocol, it's about the talking of it all. And a lot of our work, it really is not sort of possible without having relationships with the city and not without having those transparent sort of conversations, And I think that's what helps. The more that we get engaged with the community and with the local jurisdictions, the more we give back to them, that it's going to come back to you as well. So that was a huge part of us trying to find our place in this city, is to just really work and look at building those relationships. That's a huge part of what we do here.
And I think it's really important, well said. I think it's the future. It's really the future of affordability, accessibility, and questions of equity in the city. And it's going to rely on a collaboration with architects and upfront policy making and taking advantage of public property and public land that is available. I'm gonna move over. Please, anybody in the audience have any questions, interrupt. I did see Jeremy Wahlberg, who I believe you folks know. He says worm here. That was his old nickname. I don't know if it still is. He says, so exciting to see the breadth and diversity and success of your team. How might some approaches to communication within your studio occur within your studio or during your projects? He said, so many projects seem like large, team-oriented and multiple users. How does communication play a role?
Yeah, I think Paul will chime in on that as well. I'll only say that one thing that we're really proud of and that is really essential to our studio is the fact that we don't have a very vertical structure. Our tree doesn't go very deep. There's our team and us, and everyone is sort of working on an even field. In other words, people who are managing projects in our team are also supporting other people's projects and vice versa. So there's this really sort of, I would call it equitable distribution of effort and sort of resources and attention and all of that in the studio that we're really proud of. And that makes for a very kind of efficient process when it comes to design and production, where everyone is on the same level. And we tend to translate that to the projects as well. We're in many cases right at the helm of, just like Warren was saying, of really managing a very large project with multiple constituencies. Most of our projects have a very robust community and civic and sort of commercial constituency that, you know, all of the things that need to be negotiated. And so that is something that we've honed in and we've crafted over the years, and excellent communication skills are one of the biggest advantages of our team.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of stuff that, you know, when we went out west and worked for Sebastian, you know, a lot of things that we kind of learned very quickly was like, you know, being a project manager on a project from start to finish, it's really the only way you really can learn. And so we did bring that back here and said, you know, the people in our office, you know, they should be leaders of their own project. They should really kind of see the breadth of the project from start to finish and play all the roles as much as possible. And we kind of act as an organism, like Pavlina was saying, you know, like we really, once the sort of the times when things are heavy for certain deadlines and so forth, we start to kind of migrate and help one another, but it still allows everybody to be leaders of their own projects. So that for us, that's a great way to learn. That's a great way to work. And that's how we learn. So that's the way we run our studio.
Very good. There's another question from William Cook online. Is there a reason why you chose the contemporary design philosophy for a historic city like Baltimore, as opposed to more regional styles? That's kind of a thick question, but.
Oh, it's good.
No, it's a
Very
good question. You know, like it's interesting. You know, the city is it is interesting. It is a very old city, right? We have structures and buildings that date back to all, you know, 1600s. You know, like, and so we do have historic districts. You know, I used to be a part of the historic sort of design review panel within my own district here, and a lot of that challenge is always there. It's always about how do you retain the historic quality of an architect, sort of a historic architecture here, but also we have to get the sort of that movement towards sort of progression right into contemporary times and contemporary architecture. So there is that time when you really have to balance that. And so a lot of the projects that you'll see from us, we didn't show everything today, but we have a lot of projects that show that sort of balance, that where we have to retain and really celebrate the historic nature of architecture. And then other times where we have to, think about moving forward and moving, towards the future of where our districts and our communities need to be, but very much thoughtful about the sort of the scale and proportion and so forth of the district. So there are ways of marrying that thing together, of trying to be able to create contemporary architecture within a historic district. And that's something that we, as a challenge of everybody here practicing in Baltimore, I feel like we're finding that balance, and it's sometimes it's not about just kind of retaining and preservation of what that thing is solely. And other times it's like trying to find a way to take it to the next level and to bring it to contemporary time.
I would also add that Baltimore City has very specific design guidelines when it comes to designing within historic districts. And they're pretty strict in terms of rehabbing a historic structure. And there's really good tax credits and other incentives to really do that well with the state of Maryland as well. But when it comes to new construction, I think things change a little bit in the sense that historic preservation in the city generally frowns upon things that are trying to look old, but they're not, be it stylistically or in any other sort of way. So the encouragement is always that if you build something new, therefore it's not historic, that it actually speaks of its time. The belief is that by doing that, the really truly historic structures can retain their value and importance, and the new work can as well. And we find that to be a very fruitful kind of strategy, and one that we tend to thrive in.
I think Texas Tech was the first time I heard the term Disneyfication, and I think that's something that there's a lot of people out here that do that, and we're very critical about that. We know if you want to celebrate historic architecture, you celebrate the sort of the authenticity of that actual historic architecture, as opposed to creating something that wants to imitate and be something like it, and then it really throws off the authenticity of the historic nature of the context as well as the architecture. So it really doesn't see a place here. So I think that's one thing that we're trying to make sure that we're not falling into that trap.
It's a wonderful question and a wonderful response. I tend to agree with you. I have to be careful. Professor John White is in the house, but in terms of questions of preservation, you agree? Okay, very good. One of the things that's on the rise, and I'm sure you're very much aware, is questions of what's called or known as critical conservation. And critical conservation is sort of an attempt to respond to the questions that preservation has polarized certain people, certain classes, certain socioeconomic communities, while critical conservation is trying to be respectful of that. So, but I want to thank our guests again. Please give them a round of applause. Wonderful discussion. And we'll see you in Baltimore.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks
Thank
for
you so
having
much.
us.
Bye.
Thanks everybody for coming. I should say we will have our next lecture on September 27th with Don Finley from Rice. Thanks everybody for coming.